Hello and welcome on in everyone to episode 4 of the New World Top 5 Battles. If you have a clip that you want to see in the New World Top 5, you can send that to Christopher at pvpnewworld.com. Starting us off today, we have got Atlas Fishmo, and he is playing a Sword and Shield Warhammer heavy armor tank build. And he's hanging out what looks like outside a dungeon here, and there's a bunch of enemy players, and he challenges 4 players to a duel. So right off the bat, Atlas starts putting some big AoE pressure down on these guys. A nice AoE stun there with the hammer, gets a great knockback, huge connection off the heavy attack, and that player's so close to dead, and Atlas manages to stay on top of him, finishing him off with the light attack there, and the rest of the players trying to chase him down and stun him as much as possible. But I believe Atlas is running some freedom on this build because he is recovering from those stuns really quickly, and he's just trying to guard the body on the ground. Now, this is actually a tricky situation in a duel like this because they can pick up the dead body, and Atlas can't actually deliver the finishing blow as if this was an open world fight. So it's actually more difficult for him to take this fight home because he's going to have to put everybody on the ground at the same time. And Atlas just doing his thing, tanking out this damage, getting good stuns and AoE knockbacks on these guys. Unfortunately, he finds himself very low on health, and the Void Gauntlet AoE on the ground. The enemy player does get rezzed by the healer, but right away Atlas turns around, knocks him back, and finishes him with another light attack. And then he just keeps up the pressure on the other 2 players here, actually trying to single out the healer, and Atlas finds himself kind of trapped in this corner here, gets some decent damage into the Axe player, but man, he is so tanky on this build, and Atlas throws down that big stun so he can stay on top of the healer, dodging the incoming stun from the enemy Axe player, unfortunately pulled in by the Cyclone on the Great Axe there. And yeah, Atlas taking quite a lot of damage. He quickly chugs a potion, chugs his regen, and then tries to get back on top of the healer. The enemy player managing to actually res the player that Atlas has down. This is the 3rd time that he's going to try to bring this player down. A big AoE stun there, knocking Atlas down as well. But he manages to get a good clear out with the hammer, and then tries to get back on top of the enemy Void Gauntlet player here, and Atlas just finding these guys hacking at his tail. He's so tanky on this build. Fantastic AoE stun. He hits everybody with it. Finally manages to land the hammer knockback, and hits him with the Sword and Shield stun as well. Gets behind him for the backstab on the hammer to finish him off. And Atlas again is going to try his best to defend this body. The enemy healer at half health here, and Atlas managing to connect a decent amount of damage. Doesn't get the stun there, but it did stun the 2 offensive players. And it looks like the guy on the ground either respawned or he gave up from the duel, and it's just the 3 of them left now, and Atlas doing his best to just put that damage in. He did get a nice stun into the heavy attack, but again, he finds himself lower on health. Goes for the shield bash. He's going to get the fortify from that, I believe, as well. It's going to help him survive. And then there's a great connection on the hammer stun. Huge knockback as well, hitting every single player. The healer very low on health. He tries to throw the heal down on the ground. Atlas able to stay on top of him, and he brings him down. And now he's got the 2 melee fighters on top of him. There's a great succession of stuns hitting both players, and he just traps that guy in the heavy armor stun combo, brings him down. And now it's just Atlas and the last tank left, and he's just feeding this guy heavy attacks, waiting for him to throw that block up so he can try to get the block break. Great job dodging the incoming stun from him as well. Atlas just keeping a lot of pressure on him, and he's timing these light and heavy attacks at a different frequency from each other, so it just allows him to get those pokes in whenever this guy drops his guard, and it makes Atlas's incoming stuns very unpredictable. The enemy player managing to dodge that one, and there's the connection with the Sword and Shield stun into the heavy attack from behind, and he wins the fight. Now, moving on to the next fight, we have got Toodles, and he is playing a light armor, rapier, and spear build, hanging outside the enemy outpost, or inside the enemy outpost and outpost rush, jumping on top of this enemy musket rapier player. Great damage into him. He manages to catch him with the stamina down, and there's the backstab from the spear to finish him off. 2 more players coming on top of him here, and Toodles does a great job just fencing off the tank. He retreats back up to the top to try to jump on top of the enemy healer. The enemy player turning around for a moment. Toodles gets a great connection on the backstab. Huge damage off the Cyclone, and then 1 more poke, and he finishes the healer off, and now he starts putting some work into the enemy tank, and another enemy player, it looks like Spear and Musket, enters the outpost here. And Toodles gets a great riposte on the tank, hitting him with a nasty backstab to finish him, and the enemy musket player rolling away too quickly. Great dodge from Toodles, and he wins the fight. Moving on to the next clip, we've got the Arena 3v1 brought to us by Jarda Jarix, and he very quickly bringing down that first player with the blunderbuss at a distance, throws down the spinning grenade, gets a great connection on the enemy mage into the fire staff, and he finishes him off. And so quick, it's now the 1v1 against the melee player here, and beautiful placement of the grenade. He rolls through it, hits him with the fire staff heavy attack, so much damage over time. Great combo to win it for his team. And for the next clip, we've got Deity Venji playing some bow rapier light armor, and he's doing some open world PvP outside a fort here, and he finds himself fighting 4 enemy players. And right away, he just starts going for that range damage with his bow, and Deity does a great job here, just putting damage in where he can, baits out that riposte into the heavy attack, good damage into that player, and then right away, he turns around and just continues to kite away from these guys. And Deity keeps backing up, gets really good damage into the spear player, hits him with the flesh as he goes through him, and then one more shot with the bow to finish him off. He goes down, and Deity's got just 3 enemy players left, does a great job putting damage into the first melee player, but he is getting chipped away really bad by the enemy archer there. And Deity is forced to just try to take some cover. He uses the hill here to LOS a little bit, manages to get a bit of healing, and there's a nasty hit from the enemy archer, but there's the heavy attack into the stagger shot. Deity puts huge damage into him and brings that enemy player down, chugging another potion just to heal up. I believe that's the mana potion to heal. And he just, again, breaks a bit of distance, and he has got the ranged advantage against this enemy mage. The enemy mage just forced to retreat, and Deity turns to the left there to try to put some more damage into the player. And the enemy melee player looks like he actually came around the side. Deity manages to catch him and doesn't get hit by the surprise attack, and does a good job just kiting away with the bow, putting damage into him, landing the poison shot. And now this enemy player is going to try to retreat and take some cover. Deity landing some really nasty crits. And there's the last shot to finish him off. Beautiful fight. And finally, for our last fight today, we have got Donzo, and he is playing Firestaff Rapier in light armor. Doing some outpost rush as well. He beats down the door and gets into the enemy outpost, right away throwing the Incinerate down on the respawn here, and that's definitely something he has to do, because if he kills anybody in this location, they'll just respawn right away. But he finds himself taking quite a bit of range pressure from these guys. The enemy archer just plunking arrows at him. Really good movement by Donzo, though. He goes in for that poke and then rolls away with just a sliver of stamina left, and then right away just going for the flesh through them onto the other side of the inside of the outpost here, and he's just doing a good job preventing these guys from locking him down and getting too close. A few friendly players come into the fight here. Donzo, just one friendly player, and he ends up running up the side. Donzo staying on top of the enemy mage, getting great damage into him. He goes for the flesh through to try to backstab, but he's taking a lot of pressure from the rest of the enemy players here as well. Pulled in by that Great Axe player. Donzo just rolls out of it, splits through the players, and then gets right on top of his target. Gets a fantastic riposte on that guy, bringing him down with the heavy attack, and then flesh on top of the other player, hitting him with that backstab. He brings him down as well. And then Donzo, instead of staying on the player out there, goes right back into the middle of the outpost, lands a huge Incinerate, and baits a fantastic riposte. Another kill on another spear player, and then he fleshes right up to the top. Really good movement, again, dodging those incoming attacks, evading off the side and changing directions as he drops. And now these guys are chasing him to stay on top of him. They are mad. Donzo managing to break great distance, though, with Burnout. And he's got a little bit of terrain to work with here to give him at least a bit of cover against those ranged attacks. But Donzo is definitely just being blasted at. There are players all over behind him, shooting at him. The enemy players manage to catch up. Donzo gets a great riposte, seeing the enemy players converge on him there, and just uses it for the defensive move and manages to break a little more distance. And now he's got the single enemy archer on top of him. This guy is running rapier and bow, and Donzo is going to go for that nice Incinerate as he goes in with the rapier. Sorry, he's got a blunderbuss and a rapier. And Donzo just on his tail here, getting good damage. Unfortunately, the enemy player just manages to slide out of melee range. And Donzo sees the incoming splitting grenade, gets it with the riposte to just soak up that incoming damage, and then goes for the burnout through. The enemy player pounding a lot of heals, but Donzel staying hard on his tail here. Really good damage with the rapier, and then right away, whipping out of there and going for the fire staff. He manages to get the riposte out of that player, and the enemy player tries to retreat. Donzel drops down here, and he just keeps attacking this player with the rapier and gets some decent backstabs. The enemy player really pushing his stamina bar there. Donzel gets right back on top of him with burnout, and he switches to his blunderbuss, starts shooting some shots. Really good riposte from Donzel, just reading the shot there, and the enemy player goes for his riposte. Donzel right away dodging that and then keeping the pressure on, connecting with the fireball there. And unfortunately, there's a little bit of a skip in lag there, and the enemy player does manage to escape. But fantastic stuff. And for the bonus clip today, we've got a little bit more gameplay from Toodles. I hope that you guys enjoy it. Of course, a massive thank you to everybody for sending in your clips. You can find links to the channels of everybody featured in today's episode down below, so be sure to check out these fantastic content creators. And of course, if you want to send in your own clip for the top 5, or if you want to send in a build to be featured on the channel, you can send that to Christopher@pvpnewworld.com. You can check out my website, pvpnewworld.com. It's got written guides to my builds and written guides to the featured builds and a bunch of information on the game. You can always catch me live on Twitch or give me a follow on Twitter if you guys want to keep up to date with what's going on with me. And this show is sponsored by What the Fast, their VPN for gamers that can give you better ping to your favorite games. Free to try for the first month. There's a link down below for you guys. And last but not least, a massive thank you to all of my patrons on Patreon for supporting the show. Thank you everybody for tuning in and watching today. Thank you again to everybody for sending in those clips. I hope to have another episode for you guys as soon as possible. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great night, everybody.